the report has concluded he has deliberately misled the House. That's not that much of a surprise, because the fact that he decided to resign on the basis of the findings of the report, which he had sight of before the committee published it to all of us, indicates that he realised that he was going to have a big sanction. I've got a copy here, Kay. So
yeah, it's already on. Yeah, absolutely, online as well.
It's
with pictures.
If people
with
photographs, yeah, I'm just looking at that.
100 pages long. I'm just going to the conclusions.
Yeah, I tried to scroll down to the conclusion. The summary is there on.
OK, here's some. The committee had previously concluded it was very likely that he had misled the House, and it says here that the report now considers that if Mr Johnson was still a member of the House, he should be suspended from the service of the House for 90 days. Wow. And we have a wow from Jill there, because that is a much bigger sanction than was suspected. In the run-up to this, there was an expectation that perhaps he'd be recommended to be suspended for more than 10 days, which would trigger a by-election potentially, or a recall petition, at least in his constituency. But the recommendation of suspended from the House for more than 90 days, it says, for repeated contempts and for seeking to undermine the parliamentary process. We recommend he should not be entitled to a former member's pass. This is also from the committee. Here are some of the charges: deliberately misleading the House, deliberately misleading the committee, breaching confidence, impugning the committee and thereby undermining the democratic process of the House, being complicit in the campaign of abuse and attempted intimidation of the committee. And that relates to some of the criticisms made by allies that this was a kangaroo court. Boris Johnson himself saying it was a political stitch-up. There was an expectation, perhaps, that some individual MPs would be named in the report. I don't know if they have been named in the report, but certainly criticism of the way that the committee has been undermined by Boris Johnson and some of his allies, accusing it of being a kangaroo court. And it says that he was complicit in that campaign of abuse and attempted intimidation. It also says we came to the view that some of Mr Johnson's denials and explanations were so disingenuous that they were, by their very nature, deliberate attempts to mislead the committee and the House, while others demonstrated deliberation because of the frequency from which he closed his mind to the truth. In view of the fact that Mr Johnson is no longer a member, as I said, we recommend that he should not be granted a former member's pass. So there are some of the top lines that we're going through this big report as we speak. You can see it there on your screens, over 100 pages. But that sanction, Kay, is much bigger than was expected. And it explains now the furious resignation of Boris Johnson on Friday night at about 8 p.m, where, having seen the report and having had his honours list passed by Downing Street and published, that he immediately quit Parliament because he clearly, from this report, saw the writing on the wall and decided that perhaps his career, for now, as he puts it, was at an end, given the level of that suspension, the extent of that suspension, and quit before he was sanctioned in this way by colleagues.
Jill, I wonder if you could respond to the point that has just been highlighted there by Beth and the final conclusion of the committee. In the light of Mr Johnson's further contempts, we put on record that if he had not resigned his seat, we would have recommended that he be suspended from the service of the House for 90 days for deliberately misleading the House, deliberately misleading the committee, breaching confidence, impugning the committee and thereby undermining the democratic process of the House, and being complicit in the campaign of abuse and attempted intimidation of the committee. They're throwing the book at him there.
They are, but I think what we're seeing here is two things. One is the sort of initial investigation into did he mislead the House, and they've concluded that, remember, there was that probing in the committee when we were watching it about whether maybe he was reckless, and some people thought that maybe the committee would conclude that he just didn't do enough due diligence, having been given assurance. And they've actually decided, no, this was deliberately misleading the House. That's why they've gone, quite big on penalties. But then what he seems to have managed to do is so alienate the committee by both his own reactions, but also the reactions of lots of people on his behalf, basically saying this is an unfair process, an anti-democratic process, it's a kangaroo court. We saw Jacob Rees-Mogg say that directly after Boris Johnson's evidence. So the committee seems to be sort of putting down a further marker that, there are actually two sets of offences here, if you like. There's one about misleading, but there's the second one about not recognising the rights, if you like, of Parliament to assert its standards. The Privileges Committee exists basically to protect the ability of Parliament to do its job, to say that, we will deal with members who get in the way, impede Parliament's ability to do its business. And one of those really important ones is that ministers, people can't come and lie to the House because that, undermines the whole basis of accountability. So I think we're, as you say, seeing them saying, actually, we've got to take a big stand on this. And if you like, make an exemplary punishment, which is why I think they've gone for 90 days. Yeah. The other thing that they will have borne in mind is this is not just some junior parliamentary undersecretary of whom nobody has heard. This is the Prime Minister who is doing it.
Also, actually, in the report, they note of the contempt of Parliament on the June the 9th. And this relates to that explosive Johnson statement that came on Friday night, in which he basically denounced the committee, said it was a kangaroo court, said that it was a political stitch-up, said that he had no other option but to quit because this was a sham process. And they have said that that was a further contempt because he was effectively publishing information about what the committee had concluded, and that was obviously privileged and confidential information. So it could be that by his own actions, he has exacerbated, if you like, his sanction.